I've been saying for maybe the last 2 years on this channel that in my view, we are entering a new golden age of heavyweight boxing. Now, when I first started saying this, there was a hell of a lot of people leaving comments saying, Hatman, you're talking rubbish. We're not entering a new golden age. This age or this new era of heavyweight boxing is going to be terrible. The top guys ain't going to fight each other. All the fights that we do get are going to be rubbish and disappointing. And it's just going to be a massive disappointment, basically. We've just witnessed on Saturday an all-time heavyweight classic between Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko. And this is just the start of things to come. We're going to see more and more great fights. We've already had, at lower levels, very good fights happening. The Dillian Whyte-Chisora fight was a great fight. I mean, even going back to Joshua's fight against Dillian Whyte, that was a great fight. I'm someone who has been following boxing for several decades. I've lived through one of the greatest eras in heavyweight boxing, the 90s. The 90s is almost universally recognized as the best era for heavyweight boxing since the 70s. In terms of classic fights and drama, talented fighters, so on and so forth. So I understand the ingredients that are required to produce a classic era in the heavyweight division, because I've lived through classic eras before. And I remember during the 90s, and again, I've said this ad nauseum before, but it has to be repeated because some people don't want to listen. You have to keep telling them until it sinks in. During the 90s, the majority of boxing writers and critics, and even fighters and trainers, were complaining about how poor the 90s was as an era. They didn't appreciate it at the time. Even though there were classics going on, like Holyfield Bowl, that trilogy, and many other great fights during the 90s. The era wasn't appreciated until it was over. And then people look back and said, actually, that was a great era. We had drama. We had, the Holyfield Bowl trilogy. We had Holyfield Tyson, those two fights. Even at lower levels, we had exciting contenders like David Tua and Abeyabuchi going at it in a classic fight. We had Lewis in dramatic fights against people like Shannon Briggs and Ray Mercer, Frank Bruno. I mean, it was a great era. What we have right now, people, are all the ingredients for another classic era in heavyweight boxing. You've got the likes of Tyson Fury. You've got the likes of Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker, Deontay Wilder. Even lower level heavyweights who may spring upsets, who have something to contribute to the heavyweight mix. Maybe there are certain fighters we're not even aware of at the moment who will emerge as future stars. All the ingredients are there for excitement and drama and classic fights in the heavyweight division. I've been saying this for the past 2 years. I know what I'm looking at, people. I know what I'm looking at. I don't see myself as any kind of prophet or anything like that. I'm just somebody that recognizes what the hell I'm looking at. Anybody can do it. If you just open your eyes and apply logic to the situation, anybody can do it. I'm not saying I'm special here. I just recognize what's in front of my eyes. And there are all the signs and all the ingredients to make a classic heavyweight era. All these guys, Joshua, Parker, the Furies, etc., they're all vulnerable. And I say that like it's a good thing. Because if they're all vulnerable, then none of them are going to end up dominating the division. And that's what I personally believe. I don't think any one fighter is going to dominate the division and stand head and shoulders above everybody else and reel off a long list of title defenses against every contender where he's beating everybody easily. I don't see it. I see this being a highly competitive era where all the top boys are swapping wins and losses with each other. And that's what classic eras are all about. When Muhammad Ali was around, I know he had his run in the 60s, his first title run, but the competition, you know, Sonny Liston aside, wasn't as stiff in the 60s as it was in the 70s when he came back as an older fighter. That's really where Muhammad Ali made his name in the history books, was in his second title run, because he was going up against the likes of Joe Frazier and George Foreman, Kenny Norton, guys who were more formidable than most of the opponents he faced in his first title run. So it wasn't easy for Ali. He took losses. You know, he lost to Frazier and Norton. He went life and death with certain fighters. That's what made that era a classic. Those guys were swapping wins and losses. Same in the 90s. Mike Tyson came back, people were thinking and hoping at the time that he would dominate the division and beat everybody easily. He didn't. He got upset by Holyfield in one of the biggest upsets in heavyweight history. Then Lewis came and beat Holyfield. Lewis had his own trials and tribulations. He lost to Oliver McCall in a big upset. He lost to Hasim Ratman in a big upset. He had a classic fight later on after the 90s with Vitaly Klitschko. It was a Wild West type era, the 90s, just like the 70s was, when these guys were swapping wins and losses with each other. The same thing is going to happen in this era, people. The top boys are going to be swapping wins and losses. Eventually, when all is said and done, we will look back and look at one particular fighter and say, okay, he was probably the best of the era. Because when you look at the 90s, you have to say Lewis was probably the best of the 90s era. Overall. He didn't dominate easily at all. But if you look back at his resume, look who he did eventually beat, you have to say, okay, Lewis was probably above the likes of Holyfield and Tyson when all is said and done, when all things are considered. But again, he lost. He had his trials and tribulations, his ups and downs. And if one guy from this era, whether it's Tyson Fury or Joshua or whoever it is, emerges as the I don't want to say most dominant, but let's say the best, gets recognized as the best heavyweight of this particular era, let's say 10 years from now, it won't be without his trials and tribulations. It won't be without him suffering losses and having to come back from adversity and whatnot. That's what I believe anyway. So anyway, this video is kind of convoluted. I hope you understand the points I'm making here. Hope I've made them clear enough. It's not an I told you so video. It's just a video which is aimed at getting people to appreciate boxing more. So many times fans are so desperate to be pessimistic, which I don't understand. It's like they want boxing to be terrible. And I'm just saying, open your eyes, man. Can't you see what is unfolding in front of you? A golden age of heavyweight boxing is dawning, a new golden age, and you don't want to see it. You want to bury your head in the sand and act like, no, it's not a golden age, it's a terrible era, and these guys are all rubbish, and they would have got knocked out in the 70s by everybody, knocked out in the 90s by the worst contenders, would have knocked out all these guys. This is the attitude of some people. They don't know what they're looking at. And are they really boxing fans? Why are they so negative? Why do you even watch boxing if it's so terrible to you? If the heavyweight division is so poor, why do you even watch it? This is something that I used to ask myself about people like Mike Katz, who is a well-known boxing journalist in the United States. I'm not sure if he's still alive or if he still writes. He probably does. But in the 90s, he was very scathing of a lot of the fighters in that era. He was very scathing of Lennox Lewis. And I remember him saying, none of these guys can fight. This is when Tyson was still in prison. He said, none of these guys in the heavyweight division can fight. The only guy who can save this division is Tyson, because it's terrible. It's in dire straits. And this is the kind of thing they was writing in their boxing magazines and whatnot, and in the newspapers. When Tyson came out, he got a whooping. That shows you how wrong he was about the division being in dire straits. No, the division was great. And the same now. The heavyweight division is in a much healthier situation than it's been at any time since the 90s. So rejoice, people. Look forward. I mean, this Joshua Klitschko fight, yeah, it was a classic. That's just the start of things to come. We're going to see more classics. We're going to see drama. We're going to see, maybe, hopefully, a trilogy, a classic trilogy, because we all love trilogies in boxing. We're going to see classic rivalries, man. All-time great fights. That's what we're looking forward to in this heavyweight division. Just like I've been telling you for the past 2 years, a new golden age is upon us. Let's embrace it. Let's not bury our heads in the sand. Let's not wear rose-tinted spectacles. Let's live in the here and now and embrace what we have and enjoy it. Are we not boxing fans? Drop your comments in the comment section below, people. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.